So I apologize. I have to start out by blowing my nose. Should I cover this up? That's not quite as loud as you, is it? Let's hope that's the last time. The title of this evening's Dharma talk is, it took me a while to come up with this because I know what I want to talk about, but difficult to title. Perceive the perception. Perceive the perception itself. So what I'm saying is, as a practice, as you're sitting on the cushion or in what we call post-meditation, or get up and go out and live your life, talk to your friends, your relatives, your co-workers, perceive the perception. Or you could say, perceive the perception. Perceive the perception. Perceive the, if you say that enough, it'll get very confusing. Can you perceive a perception? Can you perceive that you're perceiving? Can you perceive that there's someone perceiving? Can you perceive that there's something perceived? Can you perceive the perception? That's what I'm recommending. And the way in which I intend that or mean that is that when you're in your living room, looking across the room, looking out the window, listening for a car outside, brushing your teeth, hopefully not in your living room. Whatever you're doing, as you perceive that, perceive the perception. You could say it, I can show you a little, give you a little kind of a demonstration. Say you're looking at something, as you look at something, move the awareness outside of the subject-object situation and just perceive the perception itself. Move yourself outside, move your consciousness, excuse me, your consciousness is not just in your head, in your brain. There is not anywhere that your consciousness is not. So, just an exercise. You're sitting, doing this, that, or the other thing, looking at your computer. Just stop being pulled into the object or being pulled into the subject as how am I doing or what is that actually? All of this rigmarole that causes us to do what? Spin. If you're doing this, if you're grasping at an object or grasping at a perceiver, then you are highly, highly susceptible to the 8 worldly dharmas that are flashing through this world all over like lightning, like tornadoes, like tsunamis, like threats and promises. It's incredible. What does that word mean, incredible? Does it mean without credit? What does it mean? It's amazing. What does that mean? Amazing. Is it like a maze? Is it like Pan's Labyrinth? The world is like that. It's drawing us in based on our susceptibility to being attached to objects and be attached to a self. If you don't in some way come to a really deep understanding of what this dynamic is, of apparent others and an apparent self, you will continue to pick and choose, buy and sell, like and dislike. Join into this incredible matrix we call life. So perceive the perception. You have an apparent object, an apparent subject, and you can't have a perception without an object. You can't have a perception without a perceiver. That being said, the perception is a vortex for the object and the apparent self or the projected self. There's just this. It can't be said more simply. They've been saying this, sages down through the centuries, great teachers have been saying this in so many ways. They see it, someone awakens to this truth of perception only, of consciousness only, which is also called Yogacara. Vijnapti Matra. Vijnapti Matrata. I don't know what that means. Sounds good, but I'll use it. So the idea is to awaken to the delusion that there is something perceived and someone perceiving. This is the thing that causes the warfare, either little tiny skirmishes in our own life, in our bedroom, with our mate, with our mother, dad, father, sister, brother, friend, co-worker, with our own mind, with our ideas about ourselves, being upset with ourselves, being really proud of ourselves, and then seeing that other people don't feel that way. It creates incredible suffering, pain. We get really upset. And there may be other ways to medicate this or stifle this or push it down or keep it from interfering. But to truly go to the root of this suffering is to see that it is about grasping at a self that is right or wrong, and grasping at an other that is something we want or something we don't want. Passion, aggression, and ignorance. Passion, aggression, ignorance. So it's difficult for someone who is practicing meditation, because especially in the beginning years, I'll say it that way, of meditation, there is the temptation or the desire to want to stop the suffering, to want to meditate oneself into some kind of a state of no more suffering. This is a misunderstanding, and it is all over the place. It is about trying to manipulate our minds into being something else, being something other than who we are, what we are. So sometimes we need someone who has been doing this a while longer to say, no, it's okay, go ahead, keep doing that. Continue to feel whatever arises. Yeah, but this is painful. How do I deal with this? Just be with it. Just don't object to it. Don't agree with it. Don't shut down on it. Don't accept it. You'll never hear me say, well, maybe on a Tuesday in March, I might say that. That it's very unlikely you'll ever hear me say, just let go. I don't say that. That's stupid. No, that's not stupid. I just wanted to say that. Did you ever do something and have somebody say, well, that's stupid? Yeah, I had a stepfather. He was very intent upon teaching me stuff. So perceive the perception. Actually, if you can, you could do it this way. I was thinking about this afternoon. How can I communicate to you, to others, to the people who give me permission to even say anything at all, have any interest at all? How can I encourage you to see what this really is? Not what we think it is. This is what thought does. This will work. That's what it is. It's called an opinion, an observation, and evaluation. And we're not saying that evaluations, opinions, and observations don't have some value, but they need to be surrounded by, they need to be nurtured by, protected by, enhanced by, and supported by an incredible field of openness and awareness, like a big, huge, huge sky, like space. Remember the first time you heard how far it was between one planet and another, or the sun, and how far that was? And then do you remember when you heard how far it was between the nucleus of an atom and an electron? You don't remember that? Me either. So perception, the idea is to, the next time you're looking at anything, and this happens to come up and you happen to recall what the old man was saying, the way you can work with that, you have to flash on it for a while. It won't stay there. You can't stay there. You can't dig a groove in space. So you're going to have to work on it. And the way I would recommend it is showing up this very moment like this. When you see what you're looking at, the object, and you sense that there's someone seeing the object, there's something else happening there. It's the perception of it. Just the perception. You can actually perceive the perception. Have some curiosity about the very act of perceiving anything at all. The next time you hear something, rather than going to the sound or to going to what I hear, go to just the perception itself. There's no one there. Yes?
Can you perceive something without a perceiver?
You're doing it now.
If you're perceiving something without a perceiver, do you know that that's occurring? Do you actually see or register that?
Probably not.
So how do we flash on this perception that doesn't have a perceiver?
You hear what I'm saying, and you give it the benefit of the doubt. You work with it. You work with it as if.
What does the practice of that look like?
Perceiving the perception. Sit down, either on the cushion or in post-meditation, and actually notice that there's something you're perceiving. Notice that there's some apparent someone perceiving it, and then locate the perception itself and see that the perception itself functions just fine without an object or a perceiver. Perception only, yes.
How does that work if there's a perceiver perceiving that perception?
That's exactly how it works. Thank you. That's exactly how it works.
So is it still path?
It's path. It's path until you, it's path. It's path. Pitter-pat, pitter-pat, pitter-pat. It's a path until you see it. And when you see it, there's no path, there's no goal, there's no source, there's no beginning, there's no end. Just this. Completely not separate. It's the fancy Sanskrit word is suchness. And it's available right now for everyone in this room. It's available for everyone, but there's more of a chance of that probably occurring if you're actually giving this particular talk the benefit of the doubt. You're listening, you have some openness there, you're considering it. From there on, when you hear perception only, then there has to be a really strong wish, desire, intention to see the truth. Take all of your desire for everything else you've been desiring, bring it down to just perception, not perception only. Bring it down to just, I want to see this. A kind of sincerity that seems necessary for that to be there. I've called it before a transcendental stubbornness. I'm going to see this if it's the last thing I ever do. I heard that line in a Western once, back in the 50s. Yes.
Is this another practice of wearing out, where we just continue to see how we can't
Seems to be.
do this? It's not a doing, you can't.
It's not actually a doing. It starts that way, just like coming in the Zendo or in the meditation hall or in your bedroom or wherever you meditate, come in and sitting down. And the more useless, kind of helpless, and even meaningless that might seem, that's when the ego is yelling at you, stop doing this, do something else. You need to find something that really works. This is ridiculous. You need to find something that actually has a track record or something. So since it is a path with no credentials or no merit badges or no proof, it makes it challenging. But it can't have, because if it does have that, then you just keep looking for more payoffs, more, oh, I'm finally getting something out of this. How's your meditation going? Oh, I'm getting so much out of it. Well, you're probably doing it wrong then. That's not something I would say to be mean. That's something I would say that if you're meditating just to kind of cool off, you might better just turn on some music and roll a doobie and of course, I'm not recommending that. I've tried that, and that doesn't work. It's very circular. You just want another doobie, and more music, and then you want some Cheez-Its. And it's nice, it's good. I mean, it's, snacks and fun, and snacks, and more fun, and more. So it works to some extent, but it doesn't last, and eventually that kind of tracks down into who knows where that goes. Every person is different. Some people can actually maintain that for years and years and years. And again, if I haven't made myself very clear in the past, this is not incorrect. I'm not here to correct anyone. I'm just here to say there's other ways of working with being a human being, being a living being. And one of those ways is the spiritual path, a path of transcendence, a path of actually transcending this threefold world, past, present, and future. Actually transcend that. What do we mean? What do I mean by transcend? That's unreal, past, present, and future. There's only this. Bailey?
It seems like if we try to find the perception, like if I try to find the perception of me hearing your voice or me looking at you, it's just space. There's no difference.
Bingo. Is that the word I should use? No. Eureka. How's that?
So
More?
But it seems like it's two different experiences. So where does the difference come in?
All you have to do is continue. Continue to sit, train the mind to just see what is happening. You're seeing thoughts come, thoughts go. More thoughts come, they go. Thoughts come and thoughts go. Thoughts come and thoughts go. And then eventually, or at some point or another, you will look at the thought as an object, and you will see if there's someone who sees that. And you will start to see that what is arising and what thinks it's arising are dissolved in perception only. It's just a relative way of talking about it.
How does looking for the perception help us to see that there's no perceiver?
Because you're changing the direction to just an emphasis to just the perception itself, just the feeling, just the color, just the feeling, just the texture, just the tone, just the vibration, just that, and you're not particularly emphasizing someone seeing that or someone feeling, smelling, tasting, touching that, or you're not particularly emphasizing the object itself. You're going to just the perception of it. And what you're doing there is you're actually weaning yourself off from the grasping at a self and the grasping at another, the grasping at someone who is seeing, feeling, tasting, touching, or something that is felt, tasted, or touched, or heard. In some kind of, and the other dimension would be in a upcoming future or in a reviewed past. Those are illusions. Yes.
So do thoughts disappear when that occurs?
They may or they may not. It won't matter. Because there's only this, there's just perception. There's no longer a thinker and a thought, there's just perception. So you may describe it as was the perception of being thought. You could describe it as being a train whistle. It doesn't mean the whole world collapses into nothing and vanishes. But it's just not separate, so it's just perception only. Perception only is just a way of talking about it in such a way that you can begin to approach that there's fundamentally no separation. Separated, yes, just like the fingers are separated. But they're only separated a little bit, because if they're separated too much, you no longer have a hand. You have fingers down the hallway. It needs to have this. It needs to be here. It's not called a bundle of fingers. Is it? Is there any place where that's... I waved my bundle of fingers. I don't think we do that. Yes, sir. Billy.
Okay. You can't do, so perceiving and perception is something you don't do?
It's something you do as a practice, so that that's what's being encouraged, is perceiving the perception. So have some interest, some curiosity about the very nature of perception itself. So let's say you're sitting in your room and you look over at the side table, and there's a book with a red cover, and you see the redness of it. And then a curiosity about the act of perceiving that. We call it an act. There's someone seeing that red. And then a kind of curiosity, if you're a practitioner and if you're really interested in understanding the awareness and understanding what this is about from that point of view, then some curiosity around what is it that perceives? What is it is there really a self there? What is this being perceived? Is there really something there?
Is it discipline in sitting still then?
Yes, exactly. And once you understand that completely, then you can move around all you want. You never even have to sit again. You can join a circus. I mean, you really, literally can do anything. You may teach this. You may move to Philadelphia and become a scoutmaster. Was that funny?
Could you repeat your question louder, please?
Discipline is sitting still. What is the discipline sitting?
Yes, the discipline is sitting still. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's sitting still there, and it's also in the post-meditation. There could be an instance where everything just stops, and you just look at red, and you just look at the seeing of the red. Then you move the awareness to just the perception itself, without an object and without a perceiver, and then the whole thing starts to open up. And it opens up in the sense that you understand everything is just perception only. When you do this, you're actually liberated from this. You're liberated from life and death, because since you're no longer here, you still get to use vocal cords and have an eyeball and be able to wiggle your ears or whatever. But there's no solid separation of yourself from others. So then when when you have a headache, it's not that you suddenly don't have headaches anymore and you feel great, but it's handled in a different way. You just notice that's just weather coming and going. And also, a hard one to express, because it's not like you're no longer, it's not like you don't care about if you live or die. It's just that the way that shows up is so much different than it was previous to this understanding of perception only. It's just that you know that you can't be destroyed. That what you actually are didn't come into existence, can't pass out of existence. You actually know that. It's called wisdom. Of course, we give it a relative name, and then it comes down a couple of notches. But we have to say something. Actually, it doesn't have a name. You can't name what that is. Yes, sir.
When dealing with perception, does the act of nomenclature shut down the awareness?
It does. It does if one is at the mercy of the nomenclature. Like if you're going in and getting embroiled and you're valuing, devaluing, or you're liking this part but not that, and this one part needs to move over a little bit. But this is pretty good as long as it stays red. If it turns blue, I'm done with it. It's that kind of little stuff that we do in our mind with nomenclature. But if you're aware that you're doing that, you can actually continue to do something that is quite convoluted or spinning. But if the awareness of that, if something else happens, it's like instead of being on the tilt-a-whirl and being at the mercy of all the spinning, suddenly you find yourself standing next to something. You're not moving, and the world is spinning. And then the next thing that happens, of course, is you're also not separate from that. So you also spin and not spin at the same time. It's called non-duality. Advaita is the fancy Sanskrit word for non-duality. Not two. There's not two things anywhere. Nor is there one thing. Because if there was one thing, then you'd have to have something else. More?
Not today.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Questions from Sanho in Austin, Texas.
Sanho.
Yes. Is there a way to be present in the moment while being expected to multitask?
So this whole idea of multitasking is makes it kind of challenging. There's so many considerations and causes around that. You might need to do that in your life, Sanho, in your case, in the situation that you're in, that would be difficult to if somebody is expecting you to function in a certain way. It's difficult to do that sometimes. So I don't know. I would say just insofar as you can, just try to be aware of what's coming and going, including your own thoughts, emotions, ideas, judgments, evaluations about what's coming and going. That the awareness is the emphasis here, not what arises in it. And you could say, well, isn't there a difference between someone bringing someone a box of candy and someone else bringing someone and killing somebody? Yes, there's a difference. There is a difference. Of course, there's a difference. But the fundamental nature is not different. It has to be seen. This doesn't mean you approve of murder, and this doesn't mean that you think somehow that a box of candies is wonderful and murder is terrible. You have to really understand it all the way down. It has to be understood. And there's not that there isn't that difference, but it's like it says in Sandokai, the equality of sameness and difference. There's something about the difference that is equal. One thing gets its meaning from the other. You can, but it's pretty tricky. It's like the yang-yin symbol of the black and white together, forming a circle. Yes?
His second question, and what does it look like to be present while people expect you to function on a purely relative level?
What does it look like? It looks like you're probably with a lot of crazy people. But you don't have to be crazy. If the people are expecting that, just be kind to them. Be kind to people who are crazy. Don't fight with them. Because that craziness is very, very contagious. If you have not inspected the craziness in yourself and the warfare in yourself and the struggle and the praise and the blame and the guilt and the shame, didn't mean to rhyme that. If you have not examined that, then you will carry that out into the milieu we call our workplace or our family, our community, our world, and will project that onto the world. I'm not saying there isn't some of it already there, but when it's already there, it's just like a magnet. It just draws it out of us, and the next thing you know, we're incredibly upset with somebody for being so upset. We're incredibly angry at somebody for being so angry. We're incredibly at war for someone who is at war. They shouldn't be at war. I'm going to stop them. So What is the recommendation? You're hold still. Find some time to be still and watch what continues to fluctuate and move, so that you can train your mind to see what is true, so that you understand what is true for yourself. There's nothing here to believe. I always say, and I'm saying now, don't believe anything I say. Don't believe any of it. Don't particularly disbelieve it. Don't do anything with it. Listen and just reflect on it. And everyone is going to, if you take anything from this, everyone's going to take something else depending on the difficulty you're already having with your life, whatever is happening, whether it be anger, jealousy, depression, addiction, on and on. You could, stacks of things you could call this the confusion that happens in the world. And if you can take anything from this, I can help you with that by saying, so train your mind, find out who you are. How do you do that? Sit down and look at the me feeling and look at the other feeling and look at those. And then if you can, along with the particular theme of this talk, perception only. Perception seems to be coming from a perceiver and seems to be drawing on an object where we're perceiving something. This is why Dogen Zenji, the 13th century founder of our tradition here, Soto Zen lineage, says that when everything comes to you, this is called awakening. When you go out towards everything else, this is called delusion. So if you're out trying to fool around, meddle with things, push on things, get things to do this, do that, you're just participating in this incredible spinning thing we call the world, life. The eight worldly dharmas. But if you do nothing, which is what you're doing on the cushion basically, or you're doing very little, it's a kind of a minimalist approach. So, minimal. Hold still and watch, and the very thing that is fluctuating with your own your mentation, your adding, subtracting, dividing, moving, sorting, categorizing, labeling, will become more clear. You'll see the way you're actually setting up a structure to protect you from the truth. And what is the truth? Not separate. Not separate from anything. You're not separate from anything. You can't actually function separately. And when I chuckle or laugh about it, I'm not laughing because it's particularly funny. I'm laughing because I'm saying something that is so obvious when you see it. But I spent most of my life not seeing it. This has only been showing up in an intense kind of way for the last few years. And there was no boundary when it just suddenly changed. It's been very gradual, kind of like getting old. You ever notice that? I'm 13, I'm 13, I'm 13, I'm 13. Oh, now I'm 21. What happened to 16 and 17? No, it's very gradual. And it's grueling when you're young because you want to get old so you can do old stuff. And then when you get old, then you reminisce. Yes?
Sheldon has a question.
Oh, he would have a question. That's Sheldon.
He asks, can perception be perceived by figuring it out?
No.
It seems easy to conceive of this without actually realizing it.
It is. And you can spend decades figuring and thinking and evaluating and reading concepts and so on. It's not that the concepts can't support you, but this concept should be something that's kind of pushing you towards the edge of the cliff so that you are pushed there, and then at some point or points, or maybe there's no point there, you need to just go. And the going is actually a not going. It's not a going, it's not a staying, it's not a shutting down, it's just this. It feels like you're starting to fall into the ego mind doesn't want to lose out, and so it feels like it's falling. And then if we can handle it, we just don't reach out for anything. We don't grasp at any concepts or ideas. So we don't validate anything. We just go. It feels like dangerous. The interesting thing is you never land. You never hit bottom. And why? There isn't anyone. You can only hit bottom if there's something that can hit bottom. That doesn't mean you should go jump off a building. Don't do that.
Another question from Sanho.
Yes.
He says, asks, what's the difference between holding your seat and pacifism? You've mentioned that you're not a pacifist. So what is the difference between those two?
Holding your seat is taking all the movements that are kind of spontaneous and casual and everything, and bringing them in and holding still, holding your seat, holding still and observing what's continuing to move through kind of contrast. That's the practice. And the idea of pacifism is using a concept to stabilize oneself in such a way that you ignore everything. So if you say, I'm a pacifist, then that means that you're going to lock down. As soon as you say anything, make any statement about yourself, including I'm a Buddhist, you're immediately going like this to everything else. Yes?
If we have difficulty tracking perceiver, perceived, and perception, and perceiving the perception, can perception only still be understood?
Yes. Just saying that you have difficulty, you're presenting that you're having difficulty doing that, just that you're able to say it in such a way, all I say is just keep going. It's like, because when I hear that, it's like, and it's not exactly like this, because it's not actually a muscle, but it's like someone saying, if I keep lifting this weight, here, I'm lifting this weight. It isn't. You notice if you just hold it up in the air, you have to put the weight down before you can pick it back up again. You notice that? If you just hold a weight in the air, you don't get strong. But if you actually look at that polarity and look at that polarity and look at that subject object, subject object, subject object, this is perception only. And so the way you explain it and the way you ask the question tells me you're doing exactly what you need to do. It's like someone coming in has been lifting weights and saying, if I keep doing this, will I get strong? I would say, yes, you would. This repetition is important. Further questions? Further answers? Yes, Bailey.
If seeing that the perception is space, is there an understanding of what's occurring?
Could you say the first part again, please?
I don't know how to ask this.
It was all right, just repeat it.
If seeing that perception is space,
Space? Mm-hmm.
is there an understanding of relatively what's occurring?
Mm-hmm.
How?
You see that it's not, you see that you have to return to the concept to say what you see, and what you see is not to. You act, the way, I used to say this more, but then I stopped because I thought I don't know how helpful it is to people. But my original experience was everywhere I looked, I saw myself. Not to. I couldn't see any other. Every time I would look, I would just see myself. I mean, it would be another person, animated and talking, and I would relate to them as another person, of course. But also a really powerful sense that not separate. If I look out here, I see, I basically see myself. Not this old man or the person that I was named when I was born. Not that, but the consciousness. See the consciousness. I see it everywhere. This is sometimes I start laughing, and because I see this and I think I want to say, "Look at this." Well, how can I? Is that helpful? Stomp my feet and point at everything. Look at it. The very space you described in your question is it. It's spacious. It's not a thing you're perceiving. It's perception. You're actually perceiving perception only. And it's an astonishing situation. It's not an experience. This is an experience. Gone. Perception only, understanding. When you see it, it's like this. It's not something that comes and goes. It just awakens. And that's never goes back to sleep. Fundamentally, once you do that, you realize it's never slept. Nothing has ever slept anywhere. Everything is completely awake all the time. You've been totally tricked. Sorry. And I'm laughing about it. It's not because it's so funny. It's funny in the sense that it is so obvious. And so a woman by the name of Barry Stevens wrote a book a long time ago, back in the 60s, I think it was, on meditation. And she was quite old at the time. And I remember the title of the book. I quite often say that if the title of the book, if it's a good book, you only have to read the title. You don't have to read the whole book. Just read the title. That's enough. And the title of the book was, what was the title of that book? Title of that book was Selling Water by the River. So it was like, I remember reading that and thinking, so why would you sell water by the river? And I could hear her say in the background, exactly. Actually, I read the book. It was a crummy book. I don't know. I'm just trying to be cute, not succeeding. Further questions? Yes.
Could you go back to describing the act of perception? Where if you're sitting in your room,
Yes.
you have a side table, there's a red book.
Yes. Red book, and there's the assumption, this automatic assumption, I'm here and I'm seeing the book. We project. It's called in the three natures. It's called the imaginary nature. We're imputing a self and an other, and you're actually looking at yourself. Yes.
So the concept of red book.
Yeah. Those just like like nomenclature. It's that same thing. That it helps us to communicate, but then we get trapped by our own devices. Just like we get trapped right now by our technology. We invent the technology so we can do something, and then all of a sudden we're the prisoner of our technology. How many of you have thought about throwing your cell phone out the car window? Yeah, here too. Yeah, I found a cell phone by the road once, and I remember calling the person, thinking, "I wonder if they're really going to want this back." They did. They wanted it back. Their boyfriend threw it out. Yes?
So I'm stuck on the red.
Good.
Concept red.
Red.
Concept book.
Yeah.
So is there a necessity for
Red book.
recognition? I mean, if you don't know what red is,
Oh, yeah, you don't need to know what red is. Red's extra.
or book,
Or book. It's just that if you don't know what anything is, then you really, it takes a while to even see that there's space between things. More? Good, keep going.
so in perception only, in the act of just the perception, is it seeing all of this and having a recognition, and that's it?
Isn't that enough?
I don't know. Is it?
Let me help you. Yeah, it's enough. It's more than enough. It's just this, as it is, like it says on this banner. You can look at it, or a situs. That's the other thing. Oh, I got a situs behind my head. Just as it is. No, nothing extra. No paraculpita. No imaginary. No imputing anything onto anything. When you begin to see, if you actually see what it is, it's very much like a Hokkyo Zanmai or the jewel mirror. It's a mirror that is incredibly valuable. That's why they call it a jewel mirror, because everywhere you look, everything is reflecting you, and there's no one in the mirror. Sir.
Are you saying that our passion, aggression, and ignorance is what creates the space and separation? If we, instead of looking at, because if there's a red book, the only thing that creates a difference is my desire to pick that book up and do something with it. Is that what creates a space for the separation?
I think you're starting to get into some kind of functionality and working with it. But even the functionality, if it's repeated, that's why we have such strong forms. Repeating a meaningless function is valuable. Doing something over and over that has meaning in some ways, but in other ways is just as is sometimes said, empty forms. Empty. More. Billy.
So then is resisting perception the inverse of perceiving perception?
Yeah, it could be. I don't know. It's getting, it's like shutting down on things. It could be. It would be one of the three poisons of pulling, pushing, and then ignorance. It would probably be more like shutting down, like ignorance, ignoring the open, spacious, completely ventilated situation that we're actually sitting in the middle of. So it'd be a kind of shutting down or shutting off. This is what we do with lots of activity. Sometimes people, instead of jogging because they feel like jogging, they're jogging to kind of cover something up, because they know if they jog, they don't think very much, or they don't worry about things. Kind of using that as a way of getting out of something that is kind of haunting them. So people do that with drugs. You can do it with music. You can just be into music all the time. Again, it's not wrong. We're not saying that there's wrong. Someone shouldn't do that. Maybe you should. Not only maybe you should live your life however you feel like you should. But if you're here, you're probably interested in knowing something a little bit different about what's happening. There are a lot of people who walk in here, listen to this, and never come back and never hear from them again. They're doing what they need to do. They didn't do anything wrong. And I didn't do anything wrong. I did the best I could to present this as I understand it. So, but the grasping at an object, I think I wrote down, when we study Vasubandhu. What day do we study Vasubandhu?
Monday.
The 30 verses?
Monday night.
This is one of the verses of another translation. If knowing, in other words, knowing something, does not abide in appearance only, or perception only, or consciousness only, all of the same, the assumptions of the duality of grasper and grasp, or the perceiver and the perceived, or the person sitting in the chair looking at a red book. You're grasping that on some level. You're seeing, as soon as you say red book, or if you see it and think of it as something over there and you're over here, that's a very subtle form of grasping. The assumptions of the duality of grasper and grasped will not end. So as long as knowing does not abide in appearance only. So that's what, when I say you're here, something else is out there. I was thinking today about moving the awareness out and looking at the person that you are, using your imagination. You're here, and there's what you're looking at, and realize it's just the perception. That it's just the perception only. It's not the object, and it's not the perceiver. not to. Yes, sir.
What happens to consciousness when there's no longer any grasping?
Good question. I don't think anything happens to it. You have a further question? That's a good question. I thought my answer was really good.
What do you mean nothing happens?
I mean that nothing occurs. Nothing happens. Consciousness is not a thing. We're actually, everyone, every human being, your birthright is to awaken to the truth. I mean, if that's the direction you want to head, you want to know what is this? What is this true? Fundamentally true? What is it? What is the fundamental truth? Genjo Koan, as it said, actualizing the fundamental point means it's just this. You don't have to actualize anything. Yes? No? Scratching your chin? Okay. Anyone else scratching their chin? More? Shuka? Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
Stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our red chant books, the red book on the side table, or on your cushion. And again, we'd like to remind everybody about the donation boxes that we have in the hallway. We appreciate any help you can give us.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.